Hello. Thank you very much for anybody who's tuned in nice and early. This is Sukhi Wahiwala, and with our brilliant guest this evening on the Empower Hour. Just getting it set up for streaming online. And there we have it. Well, welcome everybody. Nice and early. Today we have a tremendous guest with ourselves who is somebody who is a bit of a pioneer within the industry. Well, actually, more than a pioneer, known as the pioneer within the industry. His name is Howard Kosky. He is with us today, this evening. You can see him live this evening. This is the Empower Hour show. And this gentleman is none other than somebody who's pioneered a brand new technique of broadcasting and has helped heads of state, government. Oh my goodness, if I give you a list of all the stuff, I think we're going to get straight into it very shortly. He has assisted with the broadcast systems of the whole of the actual broadcast as well, with Marketeers as an organization, and is in what we call the formidable position to have put into accolade of 25 years of being at the founder and the head of an organization which has been broadcasting for BBC and many others around the planet. It's none other than Howard Kosky. Welcome, Howard.
Hello, Sukhi. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. I tried my best to bring your amazing, tremendous introduction into a slightly smaller, shorter paraphrase environment, and it didn't quite work. I nearly did it, but there we are.
It was excellent.
Welcome to episode 84, everybody. This is the Empower Hour show with myself, Sukhi Wahiwala, Howard Kosky, which I've just introduced, and today we are going to get very close with his journey of how he went from where, you know, he is as an idea, as a general individual who came in from British background, and what he humbly says, somebody who comes from a normal background, a working class background, to somebody who's become a head pioneer and founder of Marketeers as a broadcast organization globally. So, Howard, I'd love to ask you a few beautiful questions, but I'm going to start, if I may, way back to right at the start. So, where are you actually from, Howard?
Grew up in a part of northwest London called Edgware, very end of the Northern Line. Benefit being if ever you fell asleep on the tube of a late evening coming back from town, you know, you'd never miss your stop.
You'd be the last one, last stop. And just a lovely question. And I usually ask people about significant memories that they've got when they were growing up as a child. What sort of school did you go to, and was it local? Because a lot of people think, surprisingly, with this modern generation, and there's nothing against that generation, that it's an overnight success. And people who have kind of like established themselves as a brand within the business have kind of like done it overnight, or not really worked very hard for it. So I'm trying to sort of kind of put that right with the Empower Hour show itself. Please tell us a few things about significances of what was school like.
Yeah, so I went to a school called Edgware Secondary School. It's actually called Spur Road because it was in the middle of the council estate. It was a great school for teaching about life, I would say. Very eclectic groups of individuals. The school in the end was knocked down. Unfortunately, there'd been some fatal stabbings there, and it kind of over a number of years, the school deteriorated dramatically. Thankfully, after I'd left.
Of course.
But yeah, it's one of those schools where, do you know what, Sukhi, it was great. I wouldn't change it for the world, because I think what it did, it opened my eyes very early on to society, the world, prejudices, what the reality was, pragmatism, understanding, street, should we say, and the fact that, you know, there was no rose-tinted glasses as to what life was going to hold. And the lessons I learned about life going to that school were, I think, what helped shape me. So, you know, it was a school at the end of the road because I grew up on the edge of the council estate. The characters that went there were of different types, should we say. But, you know, just everyone sort of, the school was a destination, wasn't it? Teachers back in the day, even though the school wasn't great, the teachers tried to bring discipline into it. So tried to teach you right from wrong. So even if you did wrong, you knew it was wrong, kind of thing.
Yes.
But, you know, the school was a school. It was great. You know, Dad household, only child, mum and dad, normal working class couple.
Mhm.
Dad was a minicab driver.
Wow.
So not the greatest occupation, but dad was doing what he could to try and make ends meet. Mum was a part-time secretary for a while, then stopped work. So,
Mhm.
it's no violins, but it was just one of those upbringings that was that. But what I value from my dad, who became my hero in life, was time. So,
Mhm.
my early fond memories were Sunday mornings. Dad would, as a proper little lad, Dad would take me to Regent's Park to feed the ducks. And I still love today. I find it very relaxing just to watch ducks, bizarrely, on a
Take a,
bankside. And he used to take
take
to
a
the
bit of
Irish
time out.
Museum at Hendon. So my Sundays was dad time, because dad was working 6.5 days a week. So they were real fond memories. School was school. Bear in mind I was growing up in the 70s. Sukhi world was a bit
Mm.
different then. Youth clubs were actually half decent. You do your little activities there. Um, and sort of my social piece going through kind of the early school years from say sort of like 10, 11 to about 15, 16. A lot of it was spent while I was very fortunate. I had some very close friends. My best pal Nick is still we're like brothers.
Wow.
We have this innate ability to sit in a room, not say a word to each other, but we know what each other one's thinking. It's that kind of strength of relationship.
Mhm.
Um, and I kind of grew up a lot more in Nick's house than I did my own.
That's something that's really a thing of the past here these days, because you know that being kind of close to all your friends and becoming like one big family. But these days and age, the children don't tend to be that close to neighbors, like it used to be. Sort of like you leave your child next door, or they would hang out together and grow up together. Do you find that's the case nowadays?
I think it depends what neighbourhood you're in, Suki. Even when we were growing up, you'd hear stories about families where they leave the back door open, and it was safe to do so. I think we just live in a society where, I mean, I'm a parent, and you try to give your children freedom and not be paranoid, but you can't help but be
Mm.
slightly overprotective at times because obviously as a parent, you want to protect your children, do the best for them. But, when I was growing up, there was, Nick lived in the part of the area where actually it was a nicer part of town, should we say? So, and Nick was like a brother. And I said because I think it was unusual. Most of the kids at my school had bigger families, so
Okay.
it wasn't the norm to be an only child.
Mm.
And unfortunately, my grandparents weren't around either. So, kind of, my best pal Nick was like it's like a brother
That's
still
it.
was my brother.
Yeah.
So just spent a lot of time with, and his parents were very welcoming and warm and welcoming. So it was a good time. It was a good
That's a
time.
very nice. That's a nice way of seeing it because it's true. One of my business partners, his name's Gary. He's also a single parent as well, a single child from a parent from both parents, and he found his extended family was kind of really close because obviously he grew up with his best friends and got very close to them as well. And on a flip side to the coin, I'm one of eight, so I'm the youngest of eight children. So trust me, there were some full households when we were growing up.
Yeah, I think when families work, it's amazing. I think the support, the support of a natural family when it's positive is fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the great thing about great friendships, they're unconditional. It's kind of you've built a friendship based on trust and shared
Yeah.
experiences, whereas with family, it's inherent. And so I feel privileged that it's only on one hand. True friends, I'd count. I class a friend as someone who, in 3 in the morning you've got a problem, you'd make the phone call, they're there for you.
Now that's a
Um,
very nice way of seeing
and
it.
I've
Yeah.
got, I'm fortunate that growing up, the people that I grew up with are my friends today still, no matter what direction life's taken us. So I feel very privileged. I've got some very, very close friends around me.
I have to admit that it. It really is a very good way of seeing life, and being real with your very close friends, and doing the same for them as well. Being there in support for them as well. That 3 o'clock notion you just gave the example. That's very, very powerful. Being able to know that you give somebody a call and they'll be there for you. That's a very, very beautiful way of seeing life. So one of the questions that comes into my mind, with dad, yourself, and I find more so that I speak to more and more younger children. Again, as I said earlier on, it's not kind of it's become a challenge of the modern world, but it's not really the fault of the offspring. It's not the generational issues. It's poor marketing, or should I say, it's good marketing, whichever way you want to see it. But I know a little bit about your background, that you actually spent, your early mornings as well, Howard. You were not one of those slackers, should I say? You would wake up early in the morning and get the day done. What was life like for you when you grew up?
I think, Sukhi, it's what I'm a big believer in that parental guidance can help shape you. I think yes, schools and education has a job to do. Some people suggest society has one to do, but I think even closer to home, the role of parents in trying to show children right from wrong. And my father, bless him, unfortunately not with us, but my dad, I could see that he gave every hour he could to trying to give the best for his family, albeit there's only three of us. And he would leave home at 6 a.m, come home back at 7 p.m. So as a young child, the only time I could see my father was before he went to work. So, 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's still remained today, your body just learns that your body clock is, with or without the alarm, 5 o'clock is the waking hour. And I used to get up, spend time with Dad, and it was lovely. And I wouldn't, I don't regret or resent any of those hours. No. People would look at me and say, "You're mad getting up at 5 a.m." No, because I got to spend an hour with my father. And, my dad's values of life, I still, to this day, hold. He was the most amazing human being to me, because non-materialistic, his motivation, he was at his happiest at home with his family with him, just being. And he's the kind of guy who would read a lot. So he'd sit in his chair and just read books and newspapers, very, very knowledgeable. But just, part of me slightly envious. He was content just in his being, which, and obviously, but certain things happened during my upbringing that meant that my drive was slightly different to my father's. But, he kind of, those early years are so formative in helping to shape you. Agreed. Throw in the mix a bit of society, some media and other things, and you form your own character, don't you? And I think if you're a good human being, you take from people around you the bits that you want to help make yourself and create your DNA. But my father was just an incredible human being, and sort of shaped me. He taught me right from wrong. That doesn't mean I've never done wrong, Sukhi. I'm no angel, no. But my father taught me values. He was very traditional in many regards, for good and for bad. And it was great. And sort of there's early memories that shape you. And the interesting thing is, as much as you learn from the great times, I'm actually a firm believer you learn more from the not so good times. You learn from adversity more than you do, I think, success and happy. It's great when in hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it, Sukhi? We can all, yes. I'm in my 50s now, you're obviously a lot younger than me. But you can look back on life and you just have these most amazing learnings. But the biggest learnings tend to be the ones that moments have happened that you kind of just have a reality check, or things didn't go well. Wow. You've caused pain or hurt, or something's failed. And and if it's your own doing, if you're intelligent enough, you recognize what you did, and then just try not to do it again.
Try and amend it, yeah. But actually, Howard, that brings me to a beautiful point in the interview, where I usually ask people about what we call a life-defining moment. And that seems like a really good position, or a big point to ask you about, have you had any life-defining moments that have added to your character? We call it the light bulb switch. When you switch it on, we realize that life really is, this is it. This is that we're living a life, and things become much more reality checked. And you just said yourself, you used the word reality check. So please, if you have anything that could share.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few, Sukhi, and it's, the unfortunate part is they tend not to be the great experience. They tend not to be positive experiences at the time, but they're the moments where you take stock and you recognise you're not immortal. You recognise, we're not here for a long time. And there's a moment where you just got to go, do you know what? I need to sort myself out, or just, take the bull by the horns. And there was a few, very, very early on. And there was a few that happened. There was one that happened early, and then there was three that happened quite close together. And the first was, essentially, my best friend, Nick. who I grew up with. I saw him on Sunday. We still spend time together.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, his mother passed away of cancer when we were 17, and
Quite young.
it was someone that was the first person that was really close to me. Obviously, closer to Nick being his mother, but the first person who kind of you suddenly realise that life's not just a routine that you can take for granted is going to move, and that was. And Nick's father was working in Eastern Europe a lot of the time. So, Nick was very tight with his mum. I'd be there every day after school, and her passing was a toughie.
Wow.
And then, literally in a very short period of time, 3 moments. So, the first was I married out my religion, Sukhi, which nearly 30 years. I mean, I'm sure it's not easy today, but nearly 30 years ago,
it wasn't easy.
And you're dealing with, you're trying to appease everyone. This is where, but if you're quite selfless and trying to keep everyone happy, the person you end up affecting most is yourself. But I was trying to make sure everyone was happy about it. I was under a lot of stress. I was thinking about starting my own business, and anyway, I caught pneumonia.
Wow.
As a
So
23.
Immune system sort of got affected.
Yeah, so as a 23, I caught pneumonia, and I ended up being hospitalised. And for 24 hours, it was touch and go.
Oh my goodness.
And at 23, you think take on the world. It's kind of. But I, thankfully, sort of recovered from that completely. But the specialist afterwards, I said to him, I said, what, how, and he said it's stress related, completely stress related, because if you haven't got the antibodies to fight stress, just a common cold can then turn into a virus. The virus can turn into pneumonia, attack your immune system. And if you are drained, genuinely drained, your immune system can't fight. And that light bulb moment for me was, well, there is nothing that is worth getting stressed about that can cause illness. It's just, why did I allow myself to get so worked up? And so that was the first instance, Sukhi, and it kind of...
If you don't mind, I just want to interject a little bit there, because that's such a deep point. Nothing in this life is worth stressing about so much that it affects your health, right?
No, absolutely.
That is such a beautiful message for the audience to listen to this evening, and I hope everybody is taking notes on this, because I don't really like to interrupt any of my guests. I'm telling you, I'm having to just touch base just to reiterate how brilliant a point that is. It really isn't worth it. I really, really appreciate that. Sorry about that.
Just something, Sukhi, and it's become more prevalent and prominent today. But 5 years ago, if people mentioned mental well-being, it'll be rubbish. And unfortunately, true mental well-being and people that have mental health issues, it's a serious problem. Unfortunately, there are others who, just by having a bad day, will label it as a mental well-being problem, and it may not be. And so, certain generations look at mental issues, but it's about stress. It's how you react to a moment in time, and you can spend too long worrying unnecessarily about something that may never happen. And I find people worry about what others think of them too much. Yes. The number of people I know who are concerned more about people's reaction to what they're going to do than the do itself. And they're worried, what's so-and-so going to say about me, and what's this person going to think about me? And that's their issue. It shouldn't be, as long as you follow your heart and you think you're doing the right thing, just follow your heart and do the right thing.
That's so beautiful. There's a saying that says that what others think of me. So Dr. Wayne Dyer, who says this, and what others think of me is none of my business. That's so powerful, isn't it? And you just said something really beautiful there again. And I'm telling you, I hope people are taking notes on this. This is a masterclass of reality of not living your life for other people under the sense of how others perceive you and see.
And this is a dangerous social media, Sukhi. You see a generation now where people are trying too hard to paint a picture of themselves that may not be the real them.
I love it.
And I grew up without, there was no social media, so people saw of you in the physical of what they saw of you.
Yeah.
But when you see social media now, and you see how many people are too fixated on others and the images and what they're saying and what they're doing, I find it dangerous, because it's creating a false picture of what really matters.
I understand.
You
And
know,
that's really amazing coming from what we classify as a media mogul. Somebody who's actually in that arena of broadcast, but actually understanding how true and honest you really are as an individual to yourself, and to this externalization, and obviously having to go through all those early days of despair and deceit. I mean, it's a brilliant message, I'm telling you. I'm hoping that the generations who are listening are taking this from somebody who's one of the most formidable individuals in the media industry, who's actually a broadcaster like yourself, Howard, and is saying themselves, don't live your life by what others see you as. It's a beautiful message. Thank you.
Yeah. So that was kind of that moment was a wake up call. And then I was married at 24, and 6 weeks after I got married, I was in a tight friendship group, about 5 or 6 of us, and then sadly and tragically, one of my close pals died in a car accident. He used to work nights and just, unfortunately, just carved off the road. And again, he was 25 when he passed, which was, and again, so you don't expect your friend to happen to your friends, kind of thing. And then more impactful, I'd kind of started Marketeers about 4 months later.
Mm-hmm.
And then 6 weeks into starting the company, I got a phone call from hospital saying my dad had been rushed in and needed a quadruple bypass.
Without any sort of like a preamble?
No, just got pains in his chest. Ambulance called, got rushed straight in and was going to surgery. And I got to the hospital, and I'm 24. My father's my hero, and my father was in tears, and he just said to me, "How am I going to pay the bills?" And you can't. It's money is dangerous. It's very positive. It's dangerous, and to see here's my dad laying in a hospital bed about to be wheeled off for surgery that thankfully did save his life.
Yes.
But his main focus and worry was not anything other than how am I going to earn a living to pay bills? Because he was a self-employed minicab driver. And so, part of the motivation that's kind of transpired a part of my DNA and the drive is commercial success, not because of the material object. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some nice bits that come with it, but what you realise about society is money gives you choice. It enables, and my motivation was to ensure that my family, if I could, would not have to want for anything. Whether that be, and thankfully I was in a position I could then employ my father when he was fit and well. So instead of doing 6-7 days a week, Dad, just do normal hours. I know it's nepotism of the highest order, but I was fortunate that part of my motivation was to, they call it the sandwich generation. You look after children and your parents at a certain age. Obviously, I was a bit younger than I expected to start with, but I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to help look after my mum and dad for a large number of years. But those moments, they tend to be. They tend to be moments where it's driven by mortality. It's not a light bulb moment of an invention. It's a moment in time where you suddenly recognise the value of life, and you recognise that actually, please God, Sukhi, I live to my 80s or 90s as long as I'm healthy. Who knows? My father was 87, bless him, when he passed. And had a great innings. But I'm in my 50s now, and the concept of only 30 more years, I don't really want to think about that, because it doesn't sound a lot,
No.
But and then what that does, when those moments happen to you at certain points in life, for me, I was, the fortunate bit for me, it happened in my 20s. So I've managed to take stock in my 20s. I've had to grow up in my 20s and make this and go, right, what do you want to do? Whereas maybe if those moments hadn't happened as early as they did, I might have drifted. Who knows what? I may have drifted or not been as quick or as urgent to want to do what I wanted to do. But I believe everything happens for a reason, and I'm pleased. I say I'm pleased. I wouldn't change my life because I believe everything happens for a reason.
I truly agree with you there, and that sandwich generation and things happening for a reason. We could say fate, but it is fate, but it happens for a reason, and that stimulus, the power of being able to take a negative feeling, or known as you said yourself, morbidity as a death sort of conversation, but to turn it around. To become a driver is something that's very special, Howard, and thank you very much for sharing such intricate and personal journeys with us. There's a question that I'm asking, and it sort of rides in my thought whilst I'm talking about this. Did you, at the time when your dad was such a profound moment when he said, how is he going to pay the home bills, the bills, did you feel, you touched on it slightly, that sort of drove you towards becoming super successful, but did you feel that, did you kind of have that sort of like epiphanic moment that said, do you know what, I'm not going to be there like that, and I'm going to make sure that dad doesn't need in that same way? So you changed his lifestyle from, instead of being 12, 13 hours a day during the day, sometimes late at night, to working hours. I mean, was there a direct correlation to the two?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think I've always had a strong work ethic. I think, again, one of the legacies my father sort of taught me was, I grew up in a generation where you got nothing, there was no thing for free lunch. If you wanted something, you had to work hard. It wasn't about working smart or clever. It was graft. You put the hours in. You put the hours in, to get the outcome.
No free meals.
Yeah, and like from the age of 15, 16, doing the Saturday, Sunday jobs. I remember at 17 in the summer doing, 9 to 5 temp jobs through the electoral registration office, and then 6 till midnight taking breakdown calls.
Wow.
And the work ethic. But at the end of the week, because you got paid weekly, then you got an envelope with money, literally cash in an envelope. I did trolleys at Tesco's and Waitrose. I was at Do It All doing the wallpapers. But what my brain equated was, if I put hours in and make effort and work hard, you get reward, you get return. And that reward return, call it that money thing, is a commodity. And that commodity allows you to do things and gives you freedom and choices. And so the work ethic, and the epiphany moment was, it's not necessarily right, because it'd been there for quite a while, but what it did do, it gave me an additional motivation, which was, I need to be in control.
Yes.
I know that I can't lean on anyone or anything. There's no comfort blanket behind me. I want to give the best to my father and my mum. I want them to have the best lifestyle I can provide them. My wife, my young child, who came along later. My motivation was, of course, I wanted a good life for myself, but I get more. I'm sure, like you, Sukhi, I get greater happiness giving than receiving. I'm embarrassed to receive now. When you're successful, Sukhi, I'm sure people say to you, you're really hard. It's really hard to buy for you because anything you want, you can have. And it's true. But the good, when I see the smile on someone's face when you give, and when I say give, whether it's in a company, in a role, whether it's a gift in a true gift sense, if it's enabling my father to have his weekends to himself rather than be a slave to a car,
Yes.
for whatever pittance of an income, the enjoyment, we're certainly not philanthropic to the level of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and ridding the world of malaria. But in your own insular way, my ecosystem and my world, when I see people achieving, enabling, having things that make them smile, whether it be time or finance, that's what fuels me. What fuels me isn't the ability to buy that car or that watch or that property. Or the bit that really fuels me is I sit and I believe I'm an enabler. And you just feel fueled. It's the most wonderful feeling, knowing you can do your bit to make someone have a better life. That is fantastic. I can't imagine working like this just to build your own pile. It just doesn't. That's not my makeup. It's not my DNA.
I'm not sure that you realize the words that you're using right now. They're coming straight from your heart, and they're so deemed as simple. But I'm telling you now, Howard, they are very powerful for the next generation, for our generation as well. not being able to receive so much, and earning, not just to add to your pile. These are the words that really I dream of. I love this kind of conversation, and it's so enriched and so deep. Honestly, you've touched my heart right now when I'm just thinking about all those things you just shared a moment ago. That how does one even receive something from somebody? And I find it very uncomfortable myself as well. And I'm thinking, that's so true, and it's so real.
I'm sure you're like me, Sukhi. You've got children.
Yeah.
Getting something, getting a handwritten card.
It means everything.
I've still, my daughter from about 2 or 3 when she's like, I've kept every card. I've still got every single drawing, every card through school, Father's Days, birthdays. They're priceless. They are genuinely priceless because
it's not coming back.
They're thought, they're from the heart. And then, if my daughter buys me a gift that's had thought behind it, which she has done over the years, you treasure those things.
Yeah.
Because it's not about the cost. Because it's interesting when, I remember when Gabs was growing up, the birthday parties, and the chat amongst the parents was, what's the going rate of what you give in so and so and so and so?
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, does it matter?
Yeah.
Well, what's the going rate for going to this? What do you mean the going rate? It's almost like the cost of a ticket. The truth is, if you want to give a gift, give something from the heart that the person knows you thought. Whereas, well, the average value of an 18th birthday or a 12th or 11th or a 10th is this. But it's just money in circulation, because by the time you've been around the whole class, that money's made its way around and back and, kind of goes.
Keeping up with the Joneses again, aren't we?
Unfortunately, Sukhi, I think, depending on where you grow up, but I'm sure it's relative in every corner of society, but there is a little bit of that. And what if I gave less? Well, if you can't give less, why?
What if I didn't give anything? And wrote something instead?
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say to you, Sukhi. I think when I receive a gift, I'd rather someone give me something that has minimal monetary value, but my music taste, Sukhi, is a little bit left field. I'm a big fan of like Barbra Streisand, Barry Manilow. Right?
I like it.
And my best friend Nick, and I love soul music. My best friend Nick got me a signed LP that he bought on eBay. Now, it might have been £1. No, it doesn't really matter. But what it was, it's something that it was just he knows.
He knew.
Yeah,
he knew.
And at no time do you turn around and go, oh, that's only a couple of quid or 5 or whatever it is. It's irrelevant. It could have been £10,000. It wasn't, but it's not the monetary value. And that's the point. I think, our role in life, if you achieve, I'm a firm believer, I was fortunate. I was successful through hard work and opportunity, but it's very dangerous if you allow greed to take over. And I think, I think the sooner successful people can get to terms with, don't allow greed to dictate, because you can become quite ugly in many regards as a personality. But actually just recognize that you are in a fortunate position to enable others.
I'm telling you now, I'm going to touch on this in a second. If anybody's just joined us, this has been the Empower Hour. We are halfway through with Howard Kosky. It's episode 84, and this man is dropping pearls left, right, and centre to the stage that my brain is going pop, 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 and it's just reflecting everything that I'm feeling inside my heart in exactly the same way. You need to scrub back. If you've just joined this live video, please scrub back to the start. See how humbly Howard has started in life and become a mogul, media mogul, and an individual who's become the backbone of broadcast across the globe in a brilliant way, and also how he sees enabling other people's worlds and lives and greed and money. Such a brilliant conversation. Thank you for joining us. This is the episode 84 of the Power Hour with Howard Kosky. Howard, please continue. This has just been amazing. Please continue with what you were saying.
And also, what I would say, Sukhi, the word mogul is overstretching it. In the sphere within broadcast I work, I've been successful, but media mogul paints a picture of the publishers that own, and mine's a very different part. But thank you for the compliment. Yeah. But this bit about giving, Sukhi, I think if you're the pleasure you can get from when people, the older you get, listen, it's hindsight's a wonderful thing, and it comes down to those life-changing moments and at what stage they happen. But the earlier you get to grips with understanding value and what's important and what matters, the more you can help someone in however small that may be, is the most fantastic feeling.
Absolutely.
Not because you want someone to come back at you and say, oh, yeah, you're not doing it for acknowledgement, adulation. I mean, the people that do that, I have no time for, because they're not doing it sincerely.
No, not
true.
Truly.
Actually, it's like some of the times, I'm sure like yourself, Sukhi, there'll be a lot of things you'll do anonymously because you don't want, and if you can give anonymously and support anonymously, yeah, fantastic. I remember reading about George Michael when George Michael passed, and some of the most amazing stories that came about him in terms of the money he gave to a nurse to have a particular operation, and he was no one knew it was him. And I think whether your wealth is at that level, or that level, if you have the ability to support and help others, and if you're successful in business, we're quite fortunate, Sukhi, because we've got to the point we're not having to worry about putting food on our own table. We're okay. Doesn't mean you're complacent.
No.
It doesn't mean you're going to be frivolous and start giving everything away. But the ability to help others is, and for me in a work environment, I use the company as a vehicle to enable. And I love the fact people in this business that still here after many years are achieving their life ambitions outside of work. I love the fact those people that have left the company and gone on to do great things. And I like to think that in part, this company has helped form part of their DNA.
That's unique. Actually giving them a blessing moving on from your company. That's a beautiful way of seeing it. How, again, I think you've gone down to the principles of enabling, haven't you? You've enabled them within your company and they've moved on into other environments. And most people, most business people that I've interviewed over the years and people who I've known, they begrudge people who have grown beyond what they were trying to get them to do.
I think those people that do that, Sukhi, need to look at their own doorstep a bit more. Successful entrepreneurs have a certain character DNA in the main, but you should never be envious of some. I mean, it's a very ugly trait to be envious or jealous of others. Very ugly trait, or judgmental. Which is why, if people have left this company because they believe they can do better to achieve their ambition and have gone on to do so, fantastic. As long as it's not to the difference is if it's to the detriment of this company, obviously I take issue with that, but it's rarely is it to detriment. People just trying to say, I need a step in a career. I want to do my own thing. And I look at the luminaires of, the alumni of Marketeers that have gone on to do, and I'm proud. I don't wave a flag and say, isn't it amazing that person did 3 years here, this person, but inwardly you sit there and go, this company over 27 years has seen X number of people gone, fantastic.
That's true. Yeah.
I
love it. And while we're talking about that, if I could just touch a little bit about Marketeers, if you don't mind, if you don't mind giving us a bit of an understanding of what Marketeers actually does, because you're actually you have told me to underplay the Mogul part of it, but you're the enablers. So if you don't mind, just talk a little bit about kind of the stuff that you've been up to, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, there's different parts, different front doors. So the bit that most people will have a touch point with us but not aware it's us is when you listen to the radio or watch TV, a lot of the guests that are supplied from a news perspective, we have supplied into content and programming. So you would have seen a story the last few days all around COVID certification and coming out post-pandemic if there's going to be a need for it. And you may have seen Sir Kenny Dalglish, the footballer, on CNBC, Sky News, Ian Kingsday, and alongside him is a chief exec of a company called VST Enterprises. Well, that's our client. So we're like a brand-funded newsroom. So our job is, for 27 years, we've got relationships with programmers, producers, guest bookers, and we're like a brand-funded newsroom. So our job is to work with brands and organizations who have a message to tell, but may not be 100% on how to articulate it and how to place it into program in the right way. And we do that globally. So the biggest job I've worked on the last couple of years was managing the Pope's inaugural visit to the UAE.
Wow.
So, and it's,
The Vatican City.
Sukhi, I've worked with a lot of celebrities over the years.
Yeah.
I never classed the Pope as a celebrity, but I have to say, being in that man's company for 3 days is extraordinary. The power that man has and influence. And the interesting part was, at the time, the Catholic Church was going through a lot of scandal and issues around, mistakes and errors of grave issues that were happening internally. And our job was to make sure that the message of his trip to the UAE was a moment in time of, well, maybe that, his meeting with the Grand Imam in the UAE, and they had the year of tolerance. And our job was the moment of the signing of the book and the visits, actually show hope that maybe there is a world where religions can be united, where divide can be put aside. And even though it was a job, Sukhi, I got involved in it because I couldn't help but just feel the enormity of so all the images that were going around the world, the way we had to curate to make sure to remove cynicism, to remove people's kind of, it's just going to be, but actually to make sure that the messaging that was being broadcast around the world was a positive one. So that's what we do every day. It's not every day we get to work with the Pope and the Ministry of Tolerance in the UAE, but we do a lot in the Gulf region because we've got an office out there. But whether it's working, I'm working tomorrow for a brand with talent talking about the importance of meal times with your children. And it's McCain's. So McCain's is the client, they're the paymaster. But our job is not to do a commercial advertisement for McCain's, but it's actually to promote the positive story around why meal times with children are actually important. The biggest client this last year, we've been working for the UK government, the Cabinet Office. So all the messaging around hands, face, space, stay home, protect nature, save lives, working with media medics, sports personalities, any ambassador that the Cabinet Office and government had on board to try and encourage people to do the right thing and behave the right way. So when you watch the news, when you listen to the radio, you listen to podcasts, you see that our job has been to supply the content, in inverted commas is the fashionable term, but ultimately it's guests, it's spokespeople who will present a message that hopefully mobilizes an audience behavior. So that's the big part of the business that has a touch point with most people.
Such an amazing, what we call, I suppose you can say that it's a narrative that you're delivering to the world, but in a positive way. You're actually delivering the message sincerely and concisely as well.
Yeah,
you also touch. Sorry, you were going to say something? Yeah.
No, just the other part is is live event, virtual event. So the old dog in me, Sukhi, my first ever live stream was 20 years ago on a 256 modem dial-up connection. Some people watching this knew well before YouTube. This was before YouTube was YouTube, as it were. And the blue bar at the bottom would take ages to go along.
Exactly. Sometimes you'd have to go tick, 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 try and work out whether it's connected or not.
But we broadcast the first live concert on Facebook. I think that was about 12 years ago. So we've always been fans of technology in the world of broadcast to create efficiency and reach.
So the world that we've become has it's been that's your playground. The actual what's become with all this new broadcast live events and cinema style, but concerts and live concerts. It's like it's kind of the expertise that you bring to the world.
I remember years ago, Sukhi, we talked to clients about Convergence Media, about the fact that you can listen. I'll say to people, have you got Sky TV at home? Yes. And this was, remember in the days where B Sky B and Sky were different. Most people didn't understand the difference between B Sky B and Sky. Dishes. And I remember doing workshops and training sessions with major brands and saying, I was going to mention something. Have you ever listened to the radio through your TV? And they go, huh? I go, well, if you've got a Skybox, you can listen to the radio through your TV. Right, so understand what you said. It's the radio through that's Convergence Media. And that was the first kind of adoption. But even though, we were talking to people about this 15, 20 years ago, Sukhi, people want to buy now. So they like to know they're in the company of an organization who knows where the future is, but they still like the safety of
whatever the current technology is and not the future technology yet.
Yeah.
You got it. But you've also taken a really strong PowerPoint. I mean, you're talking about Convergence Media, but you've also translated this into the powerhouse of podcasts as well. So, you've got a complete different environment in podcasts as well. Please talk a little bit about that if you don't mind.
So our first foray in podcasting was about 10 years ago when RSS feeds were going to be the next big thing. But ultimately, it's the power of audio. And I think the reason that we sort of built 40 years of podcast consulting in the last few years, a lot of people got into podcasting for vanity. It's easy to self-publish, but actually most people haven't understood the true power of podcasting. And in a world of shared media, it's too easy to share. Actually, podcasting is a very personal experience. Most of you think about, and the reason for the boom, there's many reasons, but the technology and the infrastructure of smart speakers, Bluetooth, streaming. So if I said to you, the average consumption rate in the UK, Sukhi, is 24 minutes. So for 24 minutes is the average duration someone will listen to a podcast end to end. Now, in a world where we are dashing from one thing to another, now hopefully people watch this for an hour, Sukhi, but 24 minutes to sit on you've got someone's attention in their ears for 24 minutes in the UK. Now in the US it's over an hour. In the UAE and Gulf region it's just under an hour. China, podcasts are behind a paywall. But what you've got is, I call it radio on demand. Podcasting is just the fashionable term, but it's the power of radio. Radio is companionship. During the pandemic, radio has seen a resurgence because it's your friend. People have been isolated; they've been alone.
Yes.
Yet the radio gives companionship.
You're so right.
And it's very and podcasting is just radio on demand. In other words, it's the power of radio, but for the Netflix generation world. In other words, rather than me physically have to sit and listen at said time,
the whole radio show as well, I can choose. Yeah,
and I can listen when I want. So, and we've kind of articulated this to brands. So rather than seeing podcasts as just another media channel, no, understand the relationship between the listener and the podcast. It's not the same as tuning into a radio station. I listen to smooth radio during the day a bit, right? Because my age profile, my music keeps me company, right? As amongst other stations. But podcasts, I've got a moment in time. I want to listen to something about something. I've got an interest in something. And the technology means I can just press a button on my smartphone. I could be working away, have my earphones in, I can stream to the computer. And so our role in podcasting, yes, we do production, but we do guest slots, in-reads, but it's radio, it's broadcast, it's the power of broadcast, where technology has given it another lease of life in addition to its traditional lease.
Yes.
And it just extends and expands the reach. And if people understand the impact of what the relationship between the podcaster and the listener is, and you work it properly, it is very, very powerful.
The way you put it is radio on demand. It's so true, and it takes it into another league. It now makes you realize that it's whatever you want to hear, whenever you want to hear it for the next generation. It's kind of the future of radio as well, in some ways. Now, there's something that clicks in my brain there. You said something very specific about podcasting being, you can choose and you can go into a narrative which has already been preordained within radio, for say. But is there another phase that's coming, which to be able to hold somebody's attention for an hour, like in the States, that's unheard of. That's hypnotic, isn't it?
Well, Sukhi, it's like this. Yeah, this is, I think the reality is, if what you're saying and what you're presenting is interesting, it's informative, it entertains, and it's relevant to audience. And the key thing is relevance. Podcast. So YouTube in the US is the fastest growth platform for podcast consumption.
Got it.
Right. I think the reality is we are becoming more choosy in valuing our time. So actually, I'm going to spend my time consuming media that I want to consume. And the good news is there is choice greater than ever before.
Massively, yes.
No matter how niche you want to be, there's something out there for you. So the benefit is with traditional radio programming, it's scheduled. There's in the commercial networks, there are 12 minutes an hour of commercial airtime. Obviously, no commercial time in the BBC. But actually, why has it got to be an hour? Why has it got to be 23 minutes and then the ad? And the reality is, if what you've got to say is interesting, the beauty of this modern world of technology, you can let it run. And so I think the reality is you hear brands often about engagement, engaging content. What they're really saying, well, it's things that people are interested in. Now, if people are interested, Sukhi, they'll listen. And the skill of a good presenter, such as is to make sure that listeners and viewers are interested. They want to maintain their interest. And to your point, hopefully I've answered and we've got a good conversation. But for me, and the subtlety is there's a big difference between an interview and a conversation. And often people in podcasting will say it's in conversation with, rather than an interview, because an interview suggests question, answer, question. Piers Morgan, question, answer, shows, right? In conversation with is a much warmer. Actually, let's have a two-way dialogue, and actually let's bring almost by the third party. Let's bring the audience into the conversation without physically completely. And I think the more you do that, the more you'll get people interested and involved in the subject matter.
In the chat. That's such a great technique and a bit of advice for our audience. I'm just so surprised it's got to this end so quickly. I wish I could have spoken to you for another hour. The information that you just drew, we talk so much about this. It's the kind of the passion you've got for broadcast and understanding the psychology behind it and all the technology platforms is very similar to the passion that I have for human brain psychology, influence and understanding. I could sit here talking for hours because I'm learning so many other things in the arena which fit beautifully within the psychologies that I teach and the business strategy that we use. But this is the time when we like to sort of walk into a different phase. And you've already touched on it a bit earlier, being able to enable other people, help them, actually be valuable to other people's worlds, but within a limit as well, not just to give away all your fortune and have nothing left for yourself and become a pauper again. But it's a time when in the interview or in the conversation, with Howard, that I'm going to ask, what exactly would your legacy be in this world? So if I gave you a sentence such as, we don't really rehearse this, so I'm going to share this with yourself. So you're going to give me an ending to this. It's the epitaph. And by no means are we asking this forward, but the epitaph of "Here lies Howard Kosky, the man who." How would you end that, Howard?
Well, firstly, let's hope they haven't got to write it for a few years, Sukhi. Let's hope it hasn't got.
The first thing I'll say to you is this is going to happen. Remember, we've got 35 to 40 years plus, maybe even 50.
Yeah. I suppose if I were to sum up the total of the human being, it's that he lived for the day, and thankfully it was a long one.
Oh, wow. That is so nicely put. He lived for the day, and thankfully it was a long one. Well, hopefully it was a long one as well. What does that mean to you? And what's the message you're trying to get through to our audience today, the Inspired Tribe and the Salam Radio crew?
I think recognize the value of your day. Just people who know me very well know this is sincere. But when I wake up in the morning, Sukhi, and one, I'm breathing, my legs are moving, I can get out of bed and everything's functioning, I've had a win. And I think success and failure in life is about management of expectation. I manage my expectation down, which is why I always win in my mind. So if I've woken up and I can function and I can get to work and I'm, able-bodied, thankfully,
Mm.
and anything above that, fantastic. And, people that know me, as I said, I get up at 5 in the morning, whether it's the depth of winter when it's dark, or even, longest day, it's still a bit dark at 5 in the morning on June the 21st.
Yeah.
But a bit, why is it even at the weekends, Howard? You're up at 7:30. Well, why wouldn't I be? There is if you value your day, if you value the day, without getting too deep, but if you recognise that there is a finite number of them, why would you not want to get up as early as? Why would you want to waste time? And it's not about work or commercial, but actually, there's, this season we're coming into, Sukhi, is my favourite. You can walk in the morning and there's a crispness in the air. You can smell it, you can taste it. There's a glisten on the grass, isn't there? If you've got green land near you.
Yes.
And you crunch. If you walk on it, sometimes it's a bit crunchy.
Yeah.
Now that's at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning.
It has to be that hour, yes.
And it's before the world kicks in, shall we say? So it's before the routine of life and world of commerce operates. It's the most fantastic time.
The peace moment.
And then, and yes, I might go to bed at sort of, 10, 11 o'clock in the evening, maybe a bit earlier than some people. But I feel I've had 15, 16 hours
Of greatness.
If not more. And I try not to have wasted it. I try to feel as if that time is great. And so when I turn around and say, I live there could be some of those days, Sukhi, I just want to go and sit and have a lazy lunch for 5 hours. Doesn't matter. But every day you've got a value. I've said to some really close friends of mine, I try not to differentiate between a weekend and a weekday.
Yes.
There's 7 days in a week. Just, I take, if I want to have a great time on a Tuesday, I have a great time on a Tuesday. Don't have to wait to a Saturday or a Sunday, and that's the kind of philosophy I have on how I live my life.
That's a beautiful message, and hopefully something really important for the next generation. So we have a really young following listening to this, and to show you how grateful a person can be with life, with the seeding of life, the seeding of other people's worlds, and enabling them. So this is very inspirational. It's probably one of my favourite interviews I've had for such a long time, and I'm going to be listening back to it myself as well, just because it's actually resonates in exactly how I want to live my life. We have thousands of clients and individuals as students around the world, and just being there for them has become so rewarding and so, I don't know whether you can say invigorating, but more, it makes you feel alive. It just makes you feel that you're doing something that's valuable on this planet.
Giving you a purpose. Gives you purpose.
Absolutely deep purpose. This also leads me to understand that we were speaking earlier on about people with sadness in their life. I mean, the word sadness seems to have been replaced by depression. And the old school understanding of a person who's perfectly, mentally in control might feel sad. If I think of my mum, she passed, it can be sad, but that doesn't mean I'm going through a depression of some kind. I'm just feeling sad. So on those sad moments, do you have anything that's a pick-me-up for our audience to just listen to?
I listen to music. So I've got tracks in my life that, again, moments in time. So sometimes I want to feel sad, Sukhi. Sometimes I need, sometimes inside me, I think I need a moment to allow it all to come out, to be able to move on. There is a song, Evergreen, by Barbra Streisand. So if I want a few tears to come out, for whatever reason,
yes,
I put that song on. I know, no matter where I am, I'll try and be in my car so no one can see me, obviously. But I play that piece of music, and it just brings tears to my eyes. And it allows me my moment of grief, whatever the grief is or the sadness, and then I move on.
To move on.
But the flip side of it is there's certain tracks that I can put on that just lift my spirits. There's certain Frank Sinatra numbers, some other tracks, and actually some that remind me of my dad in a real happy way. And I put those tracks on, and I am beaming, and I am
fully energized,
soothing, and I'm just like, yeah. And
so bring it on again.
Yeah, I know my secret drawer for my mood is music, and I know which tracks to go to give me my injection of whatever I need.
That's such a powerful way of seeing it, because music, ironically, it's a secret of mine. It is music for me as well, and because it's an emotive process. But that there's a philosophy that I've partially written called the Synergist method, and one of the actual principles in there is cultivating your weaknesses. Yeah, and that sounds very similar to what you do with music. And you said Barbara Streisand, and in specific, the Evergreen, which is the song, and it gives you that cultivation to be sad on your own terms. Does that make sense? And just giving yourself that framework and allowing it, which is wonderful.
It's recognizing your trigger points.
Yes,
recognizing the triggers in you.
Yeah, and actually being acceptant of them. And what you just said there was just you to be okay with it. You know, just to use it as an empowerment and to release that tension and extent of energy.
As I said to you at the start, Sukhi, nothing's worth getting too stressed up about. It's going to make you poorly. So if you feel a moment, if you know it's coming, recognize it, press your release button.
I love it. I love it. Cultivating your own fears per se, but keep it to your own benefits, and be sad if you want to be sad, but remember it and recognize it as being sadness. And I love it. And on the flip side of this, when we're talking about being positive, you use obviously positive tracks. Is there a quote that you like to recall, and it gives you the similar sort of trigger point that we were talking about a moment ago?
The only quote that often comes to my mind is my father, God rest his soul. Very, very pragmatic. Only died last year, age 87. But he'd always, two things he would say to me: no matter what day he was having, he'd say, "Mustn't grumble," which is actually on his epitaph. And the other one was, he'd say, "Howard, when I open the newspaper, as long as my name's not in the obituary column, I'm having a good day."
Wow.
And that kind of philosophy of life, it summed my father up, and his legacy to me is, it gives you context, doesn't it?
Yes.
It gives absolute context.
Honestly, that is such a deep quote that you've just given there as well. And I mustn't grumble, and I've heard that a few times from other people, but you having it directly from your father. And I also want to just share that, our heart is with you and all the family as well, because obviously your dad, uncle, he passed only late last year with COVID as the stimulus, I suppose you could say. And so we're very, very sorry to hear that. And I'm as you said, Selvi had a full-on life. It was 87 plus. But we just want to say that I really do feel that departure. My mum passed in 2019 as well, with this as well. Do Howard, it has been a really lovely conversation with you personally. And thank you very much for being here on the Empower Hour. But more importantly is for being so real with all my audience today and the people listening tonight, and to continue to listen to this when they read back on YouTube and listen back to it on podcast, my own podcast as well, and radio. I really, really am very proud and humbled to have had you on our show. This has been the Empower with Yourself. We want to thank you on behalf of Salam Radio, the whole of the Peterborough crew, myself, Sukhi Wahiwala, and all the Inspired Tribe, and anybody who's listening tonight. Thank you for being our guest.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Sukhi. Thank you for having me.
Thank you again. And for everybody else who's listening, this has been the Empower Hour, episode 84, with Howard Kosky, the founder of Marketeers, an absolute powerhouse when it comes to broadcast. Please rewind back and listen to this. And if you've enjoyed this from our podcast, on our internet servers via YouTube or live on radio, I hope you've thoroughly enjoyed us getting close on the Empower Hour show with Howard. Our next show next week will be next Tuesday, as always, every Tuesday between 7 and 8 o'clock. And we're going to do some reminiscing as well. We're going to pick some earlier shows that are going to come live for yourself on radio. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you in the next episode.